We've all wondered how computers do what they do. How do they make the decisions they do without having the experience to call upon like humans do? We're going to be covering a lot of how those decisions are made by computers. This is done on a programmatic level that we're going to be covering today. And even though machine learning and AI are well beyond what we will cover today, we will help understand better how these things are done, how these decisions are made, and how we can utilize those. If you are new to the series, we aim to accomplish one specific thing. We want to learn Python while utilizing ChatGPT. Now, we've already identified that there's a lot of shortcomings when it comes to utilizing ChatGPT and its teachings, but we're going to fill in those gaps, and that's why I'm here to help you out. The end goal is that you be able to utilize ChatGPT and learn Python, and at the end that you'll be able to use Python going forward in all your workloads. So we've gone over what ChatGPT says we should be learning about Python for these decisions. Let's go over them real quick to recap. So the first that we're going to be covering is conditional statements, then indentation, and then comparison operators, logical operators. Don't worry if you don't know what these all mean yet. We're going to be covering each one individually. By the end, we should have a solid grasp of what these are. So the first thing we're looking at is conditional statements. Conditional statements boil down to a decision making of either true or false, on or off, and they're the fundamentals of how computers decide if they should take action or not. Now, the idea of literal true or false, on or off, is called a boolean. It's just something to know when we talk about variables and what types they are, that a boolean is true or false. In the bottom left, you'll see a tree that represents what these decision making operators are. These are called operational statements, and there's three keywords that you need to know. There's if, elif, yes I know that's a weird one, and else. An if makes a decision that if something is true, you're going to take action based on that. Elif is going to evaluate if has been satisfied, and if it's not satisfied, we're going to check a new statement. And finally, else is just throwing its hands up and saying, fine, we're going to do something because these other statements aren't true. It's okay if we don't know yet what these decision-making parameters are. We're going to specify that in just a minute. But if you take a look here at the example on the right, it outlines what you're looking at when you do see an if, elif, and else statement. Now we're going to take a quick break to understand indentation when it comes to Python scripting. Every programming language has what's referred to as syntax, or you can think of it as like grammar in English. Indentation is the syntax method used in Python in decision making, in separating the next loop that you're going to be doing, and we'll talk about loops in a minute. Indentation is important. You can use either spaces or tabs, but the most important thing is consistency throughout your script. In the bottom left here, you can see that there is an inconsistent method on indenting after an if statement. The most important thing, like I mentioned, is that they all match up, and that's what you see on the bottom right side. They all follow the same convention, and they are indented after an if and else statement. Now you see on the left hand side the one that we don't want to follow, and then the bottom right is the convention that we will follow. So we talked about you have to satisfy a decision whether it's true or false. These are called comparison operators. You may be familiar with these from algebra in high school, where variables might be equal to a solution, and these are the different type of operators here. The first one you have is double equal sign. What this means is that the first and second items are equal. If they're equal, go ahead and take action. If they're not, then you will do an else if or an else, or you would just continue with your script and ignore it altogether if those don't match or are not present. The next one's a little bit different. There's an exclamation mark with an equal sign. What this means is that it's not equal to the second item. So for example, here on the right hand side, if Python is not equal to the word friend, then we're going to print true. It's not always intuitive of what the deal uses for, but once you start getting the practice, you'll see that it's very useful. The next one is greater than. What this means is if the first item is greater than the second item, mostly used for numbers, then you'll go ahead and do what's following below the if statement. You could combine a greater than and equal sign to mean that if the first is greater than or equal to the second item, we'll take action. The next item is less than, as you might guess, based on the greater than. If the first statement is less than the second statement, you'll take action. And finally, the less than or equal to. As you might guess, that follows the same parameters as the greater than or equal to. Now, what's next is we could talk about logical operators. Logical operators allow you to combine comparison operators into a longer statement. So there's three of them to look at here. You have an and, not, and or statement. When we talk about and, you can see here that there's two items in parentheses, two operators, on the left and on the right. What this means is they both must be true in order for you to do what's inside the if statement. The or statement on the bottom there means that only one of these statements must be true in order for you to take action. If both are true, that's fine, but at least one of them must be true. And the not one is like the operator that we were looking at before. This means that if it's not true, then we'll go ahead and take action. I did mention that we're going to be going over loops. Loops allow you to continue operating within a section, continue to take action until something is satisfied. So there's two types of loops. There's for loops and there's while loops. A for loop will continue running a block of code for a certain number of times. A while loop will continue running the block of code until something is satisfied. Let's take a look at those examples real quick. So the first statement you're looking at is a for statement. So we've made a list of different toppings for your pizza, and we're going to print a list using both for and while. The for will walk through each item inside the list. So for each item in the list, for each topping in the topping list, we're going to print that out. A while loop will continue going through it until you have the length of the list satisfied. In the end, these both satisfy what we're looking to do, but they will do it a little bit different. The neat thing about programming is you can often interchange these based on what you wish to accomplish. Alright, that recaps the lesson there. I know we went over the items really quick, and that's why it's important to go back over the challenges I have linked in the description below. You may have questions that I haven't answered here or need more details. If you need more help, feel free to reach out to me through the comments below. But the items I want to recap what we went over in this lesson include conditional statements, how to indent your code, comparison operators, logical operators, and loops. So that summarizes our lesson. Let's go ahead and take a look at the solution to the challenges. Alright, so we're going to go over the solutions to the challenges that are included in the description below. Now the assumption is that you've at least taken a look at the challenges and hopefully have tried and solved them yourself. But if you've had any challenges or roadblocks, I'm happy to go over them with you. Alright, so the first one here is that you're to write a program that asks the user for their age. And if they're older than 18, they're going to print out that you're an adult. So taking a look here, we look at line 3, where it gets the age from an input and stores into a variable. And then we're going to print out that you are this variable age, years old. Now here we use an if statement, which we talked about during the lesson. The age is converted to an int. This means that we talked about types. So when you do an input, it inputs it as a string type. But we need to make sure that it's a number in order to compare it. So that's what this int in parentheses does. It converts it into an integer type. And then we can compare that with the number 18. So if you are greater than or equal to 18, it's going to tell you that you are an adult. The second challenge was to have you put in your favorite color. And if it was red, then it was going to go ahead and print out that red is the primary color. So just as the first one here, we have an input with the story to the word color. We can leave this as a string this time. It says that your favorite color is X, or the word color. Now the if statement here is we went ahead and used an or statement. And the reason for that is these string comparisons will be literal, including what that means is it will be a capital if there's a capital or lowercase if there's a lowercase. So we want to make sure that if the user does either case that we capture it here. And that's why you have an or here. So if it's lowercase red or uppercase red, it's going to print out that result. The next question here, it says you input your favorite number, and what it's going to do is it's going to do a loop through that and print out the numbers. So I'll go ahead and put that out here. I go ahead and read into it a little bit more. The next one asks you for two numbers to compare them and print out the larger number. So we're going to go ahead and take those inputs, and because it's a number we have to change it into an integer again. And then we use the greater than sign and print it out if it's a greater than in the first number. We're using an else statement here, and the reason is if this first number is less than the second number, we already know what we want to do. So it's going to be a catch-all. That means it can either be only greater than or less than. And if it's one of those two, we'll print that. We're not capturing it if they're equal. We're just going to ignore them if they're equal. Alright, next one here. It's going to compare two numbers like the one before, but it's going to print out if it's smaller than, if it's less than instead of greater than. So it's almost the exact same, except for this sign right here is a less than instead of a greater than. And the last challenge here is to write a program for two numbers and prints which one is greater than, less than, or equal to the second number. So really it's the same thing as the last two challenges, except for we have an elif. So it's going to compare the first and second number. If the first one's greater than the second, it's going to print out the greater. We use elif, which means if this first one is false, we're going to try a second chance. We're going to print it out if it's less than. So that we go ahead and compare those there. And if it's not greater than, if it's not less than, that must mean that they're equal. So that's why we have the else statement. So hopefully that answers all the questions with the challenges. Like before, if you have any questions or something's not clear, go ahead and put it in the comments and I'll be happy to reply.